Shalom. First and foremost, I love to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, which are the true names of the Heavenly Father and of the Son, who the world ignorantly calls Christ, who is a so-called black man. Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Brakathum, to all the Akim out there that's pushing this truth and sincerity. Why Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Brakathum, to all the elders out there who labor in truth and taught us the truth. Right, yeah. So this video is going to be about Herod the Great and Alexander the Great, the so-called Great. Which, when we see what's going on in Israel, God's saying that Herod and Alexander are Israelites, which those guys are not a part of the nation of Israel. Those guys are Edomites. Those guys are not in the family tree of Israel. They're Edomites and they're going to be destroyed. Alexander the Creep, which really he's Alexander the Third and Herod. So, and this lesson is going to be quick, to the point as well. Lord's will, however the Spirit works. And I have scholarly sources as well as biblical sources to prove that they're Edomites. All right, so this is from livius.org, and this is a valid, credible source right here, and it's on Alexander. It says, like all ancient kings, Alexander claimed that the gods were his ancestors. Already in the 5th century, the Macedonian kings said that they descended from Perdiccas, who descended from Temenos, a king of Argos. Now, this is Alexander's line, saying that he descended from Temenos, which, what does that go back to? That goes back to the Temanite dynasty. Which, who's Teman? Teman is one of the offsprings of Esau. This is Genesis, the 36th chapter, starting at verse 9. Now, what it says? Descendants of Esau. Verse 9. And these are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. These are the names of Esau's son: Eliphaz, the son of Adad, the wife of Esau; Ruel, the son of Bes Emath, the wife of Esau. Right, so you see how you got all the sons of Esau, right? Verse 11. And the sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zopo, and Gatam, and Kanaz. So you see that? So Teman is the grandson of Esau, proving you that Esau is the so-called white man, and proving you that Alexander the Great is indeed an Edomite. He's a so-called white man. He's not an Israelite. And we can actually prove it, prove that he's a Edomite through the scriptures. So now let's go here. We can go to Daniel 8th chapter to prove that. So Daniel 8:1. So this is a vision of the ram and the goat, which the ram and the goat symbolizes kingdoms. All right, the ram and the goat symbolizes kingdoms. Now it symbolizes the Persians and the Medes and the Grecian Empire. Daniel 8:1. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel Allah, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. Now, why was Daniel in the province of Elam? That's because at this time he and the rest of the Jews, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, they were under the oppression or in captivity under the Persians and the Medes. And you read that in Daniel, the 5th chapter. In fact, let me go ahead and get that. Daniel 5:26. It says this is the interpretation of the king of the thing, Mani. The Most High hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balance and are found wanting. Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 old. And when you read the 6th chapter, that's when we were transferred to the Persians and Mede captivity. So you here you have it. You had the ancient Babylonians that were taken down by the Persians and the Medes, right there. So back to Daniel, the 8th chapter, and verse, and this is through the spirit too, because on my way back home to Philly, and I was telling the brother that I wanted to go into Daniel 8. So this is a perfect opportunity to. Daniel 8 and 3. It says, Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had two horns. Now that ram symbolizes the Achaemenid Empire. That was the name of the empire of the Persians and the Medes. And two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. And the two horns that was in the ram is dealing with the Persians and the Medes. But it says, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. The one that was higher than the other was the Persians, because the Persians were stronger than the Medes, and they eventually overtook the Medes. This is the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, and verse. Let's start at verse 3. It says, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another, and these different beasts are dealing with different empires. Verse 4, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, dealing with the Assyrian and Babylonians. I beheld to the wings thereof were plucked. Why? Because the Babylonians eventually took down the Assyrians. It says, and it was lifted up from the earth. Yeah, they were taken out of rulership, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Verse 5, and behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side. Now, the reason why it raised up itself on one side is because the Persians were stronger than the Medes. And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And the 3 ribs is dealing with Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh, because that empire was going around and conquering the known world at that time. So they had a powerful army, the Persians and the Medes. Hence, they took down the Babylonian Empire, which they were a powerful empire. But obviously, the Medo-Persian Empire was stronger, and um, they expanded their empire. So now back to Daniel 8, reading verse 4. It says, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward. Now, because it came from the east, so that no beast might stand before him. See that? Going back to Daniel, the 7th chapter, where it says, arise and conquer much flesh. There was no empire, there was no nation of people that could stand up before the Persians and Medes. They had a real powerful kingdom. It said, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. Verse 5, and as I was considering, behold, and he goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth. And this goat is dealing with the Grecian Empire, the Macedonian Grecian Empire that you read in First Maccabees, the 1st chapter. And notice how it said it came from the west. Notice that, right? Because what they say about the Grecian Empire, that was the start of the westernized civilization. So the scriptures got you so-called white people down to a T. It says, and touch not the ground, and the he-goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And that he-goat is dealing with Alexander the Third. Let's go to First Maccabees. And it's simple to understand. First Maccabees, the first chapter, and verse 1. And it happened that after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, is calling Alexander, the son of Philip, the Macedonian, not the Israelite, who came out of the land of Kittim, has smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. Now, when the hell did Israel go to war against the Persians and the Medes? Why weren't Alexander's army comprised of Israelites? How come Alexander's friends, closest friends, how come they weren't wicked Israelites? Because the main friends of Alexander the Third was Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lacemaeus, and Cassandra. So how come they weren't Israelites? How come they were heathens? How come they were Greeks? That doesn't make any sense. See? Back to Daniel chapter 8 and verse 6. It says, and he came to the ram that had two horns, dealing with the Persians and Medes, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran into him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler, which choler means anger, bitterness. It says, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram and break his two horns. Yeah, he took down on the Persians and the Medes. Back in First Maccabees 1 and verse 2. Matter of fact, let me read verse 1 again. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. See? So now going back to Daniel, the 8th chapter. So it says, and smote the ram and break his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, meaning Alexander and the Greeks took the Persians and Medes out of power. They killed Darius. It says, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of the earth. Now it says that the he-goat waxed very great, and he was strong. Let's read that in Maccabees. First Maccabees 1 and 2, it says, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. See that? He became very strong. He made many wars, and he won them all. Nobody could defeat Alexander. The Lord ordained him to go into these different dark nations and kill them all and conquer them. Verse 3, and went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, and so much that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, meaning army, and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. So you see, that's how so-called badass Alexander was. And that goes right with the prophecies, well, which is now history, about how the he-goat waxed and very, very great and was very strong. He went around and conquered all the kings of the earth, and they all became tributaries under him. So, where can we read about this Israelite history at? How come this wasn't prophesied in the scriptures that a great Israelite named Alexander? Because you will always read about a prominent Israelite coming into power in the scriptures, even when we were ruling in the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages is even prophesied in the Bible. So why the hell wouldn't this be prophesied? Because this is not dealing with the Israelites. This is dealing with the Greeks. Alexander is an Edomite. All right, back to Daniel 8 and 8. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. He died. And for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. And the four notable ones are dealing with the men that Alexander grew up with. First Maccabees 1 and 5. And after these things, he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, notable, see, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and departed his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. Okay. And like I said, that's dealing with Cassandra, Ptolemy, Lasameus, and Seleucus. What you had this guy Antigonus, I believe that's his name, Antigonus. He was actually up. He was actually up in there, but you had either three or two out of the four. You had three or two. I believe it was Lasameus, Ptolemy, and Cassandra. They teamed up and they killed Antigonus. Yep. So he was out of there. So yeah, here we go. So now let's scroll all the way down because I'm not going to break down the whole chapter. Go ahead and let the scriptures break it down for itself. Back to Daniel 8:15. And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man would be an angel. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Uliah, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. Okay, so this is spiritual. So the angel Gabriel makes us to understand. Verse 17. Let me scroll down. Verse Okay, boom, verse 20. Now it says the ram's identity. Now let's see if I was right or wrong. Daniel 8:20. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. So you see, it breaks it down for you. The goat. Verse 21. And the rough goat is the king of Greece, which is Alexander. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, which is Alexander right there. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in its power, right? Because he died. So the kingdoms that were the kingdoms that erupted from him dying was out of Ptolemy, Cassandra, Lasameus, and Seleucus. All right, so the chapter breaks it down for itself. So that just proves that Alexander is an Edomite. Remember, he said that he comes from the Temenos line, the Temenos dynasty, which you precept that with Genesis 36 and 11. You see that Teman is a grandson of Esau. All right, so that's it on Alexander. Now let's get to Herod. Now they're saying Herod is an Israelite, which Herod is not an Israelite, and this can be easily disproven. So now it says Herod, born 772 BCE, Idumea, right? Idumea, which where's his father at? His father is Antipater the Idumean. See that? It says that he's a native of Edom. He's an Edomite. He's not an Israelite. He's an Edomite. Which Esau is a so-called Caucasian man today. But notice how it says here, born Idumea, Hasmonean Judea. Now, why does it say Hasmonean Judea? If y'all don't know, King Herod he was Jewish. He was Jewish. Now, why was he Jewish? Because of the Hasmonean dynasty. What is the Hasmonean dynasty? What we know as first and second Maccabees. Scholars calls those Levites, those he calls that Levitical line the Hasmonean dynasty. That's what Esau calls it. So now let's read this. Now this is either Jonathan or Yachanan High Cranus. You read about him in Maccabees. It says ruled for 31 years after the death of his father Simon. Generally righteous, Yachanan enacted several decrees to improve the spiritual level of the people. It says the most famous of which the requirement of tithing any produce, about which there was a doubt as whether the necessary tithes had been already removed. However, Yachanan committed a severe error that had drastic implications for the Jewish people. Watch this. Upon conquering the neighboring people of Edom, he compelled them to convert to Judaism, contradictory to the Jewish law, expressly forbidding forced conversions. Later, Herod himself, a converted Edomite, caused terrible suffering for the Jewish people. So you see that? So because of us, the Israelites, subjecting the Edomites, we forced, not them just willingly converting, we forced them to convert to our customs, to our way of living. So that's why it says Hasmonean Judea. But that guy is an Edomite. And through the scriptures, we're going to prove it. This is Revelation, the 12th chapter, and verse 1. And it says the woman Israel. It says, there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars, which, like it says up there, is the woman is dealing with Israel, the nation Israel. Let's go ahead and get Second Esdras. Second Esdras, the 10th chapter. Second Esdras 10 and verse 40. So I'm going to start at verse 41. It says, thou sawest a woman mourning, and thou beginnest to comfort her. But now seest thou the likeness of the woman no more. But there appeared unto thee a city builded. And whereas she told thee of the death of her son, this is the solution. This woman whom thou sawest is Zion. And whereas she said unto thee, even she whom thou seest as a city builder. So you see, so Israel being likened to a woman. Then get the one that everybody should know. This book of Jeremiah, chapter 6 and verse 2. And it reads, I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. See, so Israel is likened to a woman. So boom. So then it says that the woman was clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, which the sun and the moon, that represents knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. All right. Then, like I said, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Which, let me go into the word for sun here. Then I'm going to go into the word for moon. which the sun and the moon are what? Is light. It's light. Sun, light. See that? It says light. The sun, the rays of the sun, light, light of day. So boom. So you see how it says light right there, right? Let's go here in Sirach. Let's go to Sirach, chapter 24. Sirach 24 now. Now this chapter is dealing with wisdom. Boom. Sirach 24 and verse 27. It says, he maketh the doctrine of knowledge. So you see that knowledge appear as the light and as Gion in a time of vintage. See that? So knowledge being likened unto a light. Verse 32. I will yet make doctrine to shine as the morning, and will send forth her light are far off. Which doctrine is comprised of what? Knowledge and wisdom. There's wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7. Now I'm gonna start at verse 24. It says, for wisdom is more moving than any motion. She passeth and goeth through all things by reason of her pureness. For she is the breath of the power of the Most High, and a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty. Therefore can no defiled thing fall into her. That's why, not every Israelite can get this thing. Because the rest of Israel, they are defiled. Verse 26. For she is the brightness. And what is light? What is the sun and moon? Is not the sun bright? Is not the moon bright? For she is the brightness of the everlasting light, the unspotted mirror of the power of the Most High, and the image of his goodness. Now let me scroll down to verse 29. It says, for she is more beautiful than the sun, and above all the orders of stars, being compared with the light. She is found before it. So see, knowledge, wisdom, understanding being likened unto light. Let's get this Ecclesiastes, the 8th chapter, the 1st verse. And it reads, who is as the wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom maketh his face to shine. And it's not the sun shiny, it's not the moon shiny, and the boldness of his face shall be changed. So there goes precepts letting you know that the sun and the moon is dealing with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Revelation 12:1 again. It says, and there appeared a great wonder of heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. That's right, because Israel were in captivity under the Romans. So we were catching hell. That's why it says in pain to be delivered, because the scriptures likens Israel catching hell to birth pains. Verse 3. So right here it says the red dragon, Satan. The red dragon, Satan, which the red dragon, Satan, is not dealing with the spiritual demon Satan. And we're going to get into it. Verse 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now, this is dealing with the ancient Roman Empire, the pagan Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire. The reason why I said 7 heads and 10 horns is because that's talking about the common markets, or the provinces, or different rulers of the Roman Empire. Verse 4. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and they cast them to the earth. Now, what is this talking about? This is talking about 70 AD. When the Romans kicked Israel out of the land. Because the third part of stars, we read in verse 1 that the 12 stars are dealing with Israel. Now, why does it say the third stars? Because the third stars is dealing with the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So they conquered us, and we went to war a bunch of times. It says, and the dragon stood before the woman, Israel, which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as it was born. And who was that child? Yahweh Shai. Now, who wanted to devour her child? Herod. Herod. Which Herod, he was a Roman. He was an Edomite. He's a part of this great red dragon. So if Herod was an Israelite, how come he was? How come the scriptures is pointing him out like a sore thumb who wanted to kill the child as ready it was born? And let's go ahead and get that. It's Matthew, the 2nd chapter, and verse 1. It says, now when Yahushua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born king of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him, which through the spirit that star is a chariot. Verse 3, when Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests, the scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Hamashiach should be born. And they said unto him, and Bayathlachem of Yahweh, for thus it is written by the prophet. Now let me go ahead and skip down. Verse 7. Then Herod, when he had privately called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. Which he was lying. He really didn't want to worship the Lord. He wanted to kill the Lord. He wanted to murder him. So now, let me go to verse 12. It says, and being warned of the Most High in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. Why is that? Because Herod wanted to kill the Lord. Verse 13. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of Yahweh appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Which goes right with Revelation, the 12th chapter, where it says, Revelation 12 and verse 4 in the middle of it, and the dragon, which is the Roman Empire, stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. That's doing Hamashiach. Herod wanted to kill Hamashiach as soon as he was to be born. See? So that proves that, Herod is an Edomite, and Alexander is an Edomite. Jake didn't start taking over the Roman Empire until, who was this guy name? Not Constantine, but a brother before him. His name escapes me. And it's not Septimius Severus neither. Somebody also came before him, but his name escaped me. But Lord willing, you few brothers and sisters were edified. Till next time, shalom.